So this is our, fifth meetup of the series called Generative AI in Enterprise. Topic of the day is LLM evaluation. For the last four meetups, actually, we had like different other speakers, and this meetup, I thought like maybe I'll take up this, day to discuss about LLM evaluation, right? So again, the name of the meetup group is Generative AI in Enterprise. The series is recorded, and I'm going to put this recording into our Curious Circuit is the YouTube channel where I'm going to put this recording so that anyone who is interested kind of like getting into that Zoom meeting because I have like exposed the URL, right?
Right.
So I can log the meeting, but then if someone wants to join in, like they will not be able to join. So that's the problem. Okay. New experience, right? Every time there is a new experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. You can connect me on LinkedIn. And disclaimer. So I'm Ujjal Bhattacharya. I work in the financial industry, but this particular meetup is not kind of like expressed, any opinions expressed over here is not my employer's. This is my own personal interest, nothing to do with my employer. Housekeeping. We all know like microphone, we want to be in mute if you are not speaking, but again, like feel free to unmute yourself and then, if you want to like raise any question, do that. Camera is optional, but we would like to see you. So please do that. You can ask any question, use the chat function. I'll try to wrap it up by 7:40 and then we can have an open floor discussion. Participant interaction, I was just going through some of the participants. So I was trying to group participants into like different user categories. So I see a few people who are very new to this. There are few people from the IT and data background, but also curious about generative AI and AI in as such. And then there are few people who are already actively working on AI or generative AI. So that's a very good mix. But we'll just go quickly around the table to kind of like understand who you are and what is your interest. So if you can keep it short, just a one quick line to introduce yourself. I'll call out the names and then just we'll go around the table because it's a fairly small group. So I have in my list Jeremy. So just one liner, Jeremy, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm interested in generative AI from an artistic perspective, particularly music, and I presented a couple weeks ago and always looking to learn more.
And by the way, so it was a fantastic, presentation. The video is there in the Curious Circuits. If you guys are interested, please take a look at it. Arshia. Yep.
Hello, this is Rafiq. Just I'm a .NET developer. Just I want to get into the AI. That's what I.
Okay, Rick.
Yep. So recently joined Glean from about 6 years spent at Snowflake and really just trying to understand how Gen AI is leveraged within an enterprise.
Okay, CJ.
Hi, everyone. I'm CJ. I'm a project manager from the old days. So AI is definitely new to me. And I used ChatGPT a few times here to learn more from everyone.
Gopa.
Hi, I'm from the IT background, currently in the process of standing up a Gen AI ML startup. I'm very curious to know the discussions that the more people I can meet, the better it is. It's a new topic, network. That's it.
Abhi.
Hey, hi, this is Abhi here. So I have fairly good experience in data science and ML space. I'm exploring Gen AI and working on some kind of prototype on these space. I'm just like curious to like always know more about like what people have already done in this space.
Awesome. Divyanshu.
Hi everyone, I'm currently a student at Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, New Jersey. I'm pursuing my master's in machine learning, and I have been in the machine learning space for the past 4 years now. I used to be a senior machine learning engineer at Quantify, and I'm currently a graduate intern, machine learning intern at Quantify again. I am trying to use large language models for the biomedical text and mainly in the healthcare division. So yeah, I'm trying to understand how we can evaluate large language models because like mainly the decoder-based large language models have been generating.
That we know each other.
Sure. So I am Naveen Kumar. I am founder of Truxt, where we help B2B enterprises automate their customer support using generative AI.
Fantastic. I think I have covered everyone. I'm just going through the list real quick. Prakash.
Hey, Ujjal. Hey, everyone. Thanks for organizing this. I am dipping my toes into AI. There's so much buzz about it. And if I really get to understand it, I might try some use cases on my platform. So very curious to hear from everybody. Glad to be here.
Last but not the least, Kavita. You just joined, so if you can, I think Kavita, you are still not on voice. So I think we have covered pretty much everyone. If I miss someone, please ping me. But I think we are good to go.
Yeah, this is Rajiv. I think I
Oh,
didn't. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not able to switch on the video somehow. I don't know why. Yeah. So I'm actually a automation QA lead, and I'm trying to see how I worked on like a few sample projects which I found in the Udemy and other stuffs for the generative AI. So I'm trying to see what like how do we tune something which is I wanted to check how it happens and all.
okay, awesome. So that's pretty much covers our, introduction session. The reason I'm doing this introduction is like, it's not only about the presentation, it's also a meetup group. And I hope like, each one of you be able to like meet maybe over LinkedIn and find something useful and commonality and kind of like do something very interesting, right? So good. So we are done with the introduction session. So I'll quickly, jump on to which is like evaluation of, generative AI. So I created this, this particular picture using ChatGPT with some prompts. But the overall idea is like, hey, we have heard about like LLMs and large language models. Pretty much everyone. I know like this is a mixed group, and a lot of people have already dived into like natural language processing and NLPs and other AI stuff, but there are fairly new people also. So this particular session is not going to be a technical deep dive, but it's more of like an awareness of the LLM and the evaluation of the LLMs. Next week, we are actually going to do a technical deep dive on vector search using MongoDB and RAG and etc. etc. So please look forward to that as well. But this is the topic of the day. Now, going back to our, so I'll start off with a demo, and I found this particular website very interesting. It's called Openrouter.ai. So basically, if I go to Openrouter.ai real quick, let's see, what do we have over here? So I'll go to Openrouter.ai and Openrouter.ai, and let's see what we have over here. So they have this chat interface, and they have all this like different large language models that I can pick and choose, and you can actually add more models. And then if I say, hi, how are you? Immediately what it will do is it will kind of like trigger this question to different large language models and come back with an answer. So I can see Mythomax. I have not even heard about Mythomax, by the way. I'm doing well. How about you? Like Mistral 7B. Okay, so this is something. GPT-4 Turbo, which is the most common one. Like we have all used ChatGPT. It says, okay, something different. Llama is a large language model created by Meta. This is giving me something else. GPT 3.45 Turbo is giving me something else. So then the problem or the interesting part is like, hey, there is not only ChatGPT in the market, there are hundreds and hundreds of models out there in the market. Of course, ChatGPT is the most popular one, and ChatGPT kind of like started this whole revolution about like everyone talking about generative AI. But the actual reality is there are hundreds of models out there. Now, if I have to choose between a model, how do I even go ahead and choose one model or the other? So for example, if an organization wants to take up a use case, let's say any use case, and one of the most common use cases is RAG, and we are going to talk about RAG. So we are going to talk about RAG in a little bit, but we are going to do a deep dive on RAG in the next session. So please, join the next session. That will be very interesting. But one of the common use cases is RAG. Now, if you choose large language model to do RAG, then which large language model I'm going to choose? So that kind of like opens up the conversation about like, what is the criteria for evaluating LLMs, right? So any questions on this particular slide before I move on to the next one? Anyone has any comments or topics that you want to bring up to attention?
Hey, Ujjal, question. When you go to Openrouter, did you have to sign up or get some kind of a subscription going?
I think I did.
To this page?
Or maybe, I think I
Because the
did.
website, if you go to the website, right, it just opens up and tells you everything about Openrouter, but I don't see this. I didn't see this. Yes.
Most likely I had to, click on that playground,
Okay.
openrouter.ai.playground.
Got it.
Then you can go over here.
Good,
So this is
thanks.
the playground. You can upload a file and also start chatting about it. But the interesting part is it gives you the options for
Yeah.
different, thing. The
Sounds good.
next one is like, Hugging Face. Of course, I'm pretty sure like a lot of people are aware of Hugging Face. So this is a platform, the most popular platform where, all the, open source models are uploaded, and Hugging Face also has another thing called Hugging Face Chat. So you can go to, I just write as a guest, and you can go over here and you can choose like whichever model you want to kind of activate and go ahead and do your, complete your chat activity. So the point number one over here is beyond ChatGPT or beyond OpenAI, there are hundreds of other tools. ChatGPT is not the only platform where you can do actually like, chat with a large language model. Hugging Face has a chat option. Openrouter has chat option, and then there are Perplexity is another one where you have like bunch of chat options. But the question really bothers me, or I think one of the most common question is like which model to use, right? So I was doing some research on this particular topic, and so then I came across, this slide, which kind of like, kept me thinking about like, what is really the generative AI project lifecycle, right? If I want to start a generative AI project, we have been like, a lot of people are from the IT background, so we know how a project development lifecycle goes. But then what is the generative AI project lifecycle? So typically, what I found is like, this is by the way from deep learning AI. So what I found is that, of course, like you have to define your use case. There is no brainer over here, but this makes it very interesting. Like choose an existing model or pre-train your own model. And then, of course, after that, it comes like to the point. I'm trying to clean the diagram. Then, of course, if we come to the point where we are going to do either prompt engineering, fine tuning, or align with the human feedback, we are going to do some evaluation. And then comes to the point that when we are going to be ready to actually optimize and deploy our model for inference, and then augment model and build LLM powered applications on top of it. So now where do I start? So typical question that comes to me within my organization as well as outside is like, hey, I mean, which large language model should I choose? Like, should I choose OpenAI? Should I choose any other model? Will I go ahead and deploy? How do I know which model to choose, right? And that's where comes the model, choosing between an existing model or whether you want to pre-train your own model versus the evaluation of the model. And then eventually we have already known about like prompt engineering for the last 1 year. Everyone is talking about prompt engineering. And then we go ahead and deploy and build our applications on top of it. Now, typically, the way I look at it, most of the enterprises are not going to do anything beyond the ones that are highlighted, right? So of course, I'm going to define my use case, but we are really not going to pre-train your own model. I mean, like people have been doing training of models before generative AI came into picture for a long period of time, like 20 years. AI has been there forever, right? But once generative AI, this large foundational language model came into picture, most of the use cases that are kind of like popping up is like when we go ahead and choose an existing model, and then we do prompt engineering on top of it, and then we do evaluation, and then we go ahead and deploy. Our focus of the topic is like evaluation, but this is like just to give a lay of the land. Any questions on this particular or any thought process around like the generative AI project lifecycle? Anyone has any comments also, like feel free to. This is the time.
Yeah, Ujjwal, I just wanted to share, and I'll put it in the chat. I found an LLM index that compares a bunch of these different models and also gives some insight into some of the exact questions that you're asking. It might be useful as even another separate discussion. It could actually probably be a whole separate session.
Absolutely. Okay. Interesting. Anyone else? Okay. So let's move on. So now I know like we are going to talk about like choosing an existing model and evaluating, but what does pre-train require, or what does fine-tuning require, or what does aligning with human feedback actually require? So basically, based on my understanding, so the way it works is like Google, for example, I'll take an example. Google has a model called FLAN-T5, right? So it's a instruct LLM that is like in a very raw format. And then there are mechanisms where you can go ahead and pre-train that model with your domain language. So suppose, for example, if someone wants to build an application on a law or maybe like some biomedical things which are like which has very specific terminologies, which is with very domain specific terminologies, then maybe at that point of time we are going to pre-train a model which is very custom, fitting to my custom need. And then the other option is like we can also start with an existing model, and then if prompt engineering and evaluation did not fit my needs, then maybe we'll go ahead and fine tune a model and make it like very, very custom. But most of the use cases till now, whatever I have explored, and of course, like this whole industry is evolving, and the use cases are infinite. In fact, like someone was telling me that we are in the fourth industrial revolution, kind of like, right after internet. This is the biggest thing that is happening. But more importantly, like this whole industry is evolving. So the things will change. But typically, this is the pattern that I'm seeing people are doing, right? I mean, take a model, do prompt engineering, evaluate, and then if it does not fit, go back and change the model, pick a model which someone has already trained. If nothing works, then go ahead and fine tune and or start from the scratch, pre-train your own model, which is going to be very expensive. So let's move on to different use cases, what a large language model can do, right? So typically a large language model can, be very good at essay writing. We all know that, right? It's very good at summarization. It's very good at translation. But there are a lot of different use cases that are popping up today. It's like information retrieval is one of the biggest use case. And also I can use a large language model to now invoke APIs and do actions, kind of like using large language model as the reasoning engine to invoke APIs and build actions on top of it. So these are the two primary use cases which are like getting more and more popular day by day, so that people are starting to build applications on top of it. Of course, like we are not in the business of building large language models. I don't think most of us are in the business of building, even like training a large language model or fine-tuning a large model. But most of us will be in the building of the business of either using a large language model for essay writing, summarization, or translation, or actually building tools for information retrieval and invoking APIs and actions using a large language model. So going on to the next slide, this kind of like slide, very interesting to me, is gradually over a period of time in the last 3, 4, 5 years, the size of the large language models have, or the language models has started to grow in an exponential rate. And so started with BERT by, Google, and then GPT-3, again Palm by Google. And then now we are seeing, trend where a small language models are, evolving, which is like more domain specific. Again, like we have like on the top, we have like GPT-4 and maybe a GPT-5 with trillions of parameters are going to evolve. But there is a new trend right now where small language models are evolving, which is like a domain specific long language models. Because the bigger the language model, it might be great in creating essays and summarization, but it might not be like very useful for our use cases. And one of the reason being, if you're using a large language model, the greatest and the biggest of the large language model, first of all, processing time might be like bigger because now you have like so many things to deal with. And the other thing is like the cost might be bigger, right? So for example, if you're using GPT-4, now they have GPT-4 Turbo from OpenAI. It's pretty expensive compared to Llama, which is for example, another one is like OpenAI versus Anthropic, another large language model provider. So Anthropic has Claude, and Anthropic has a smaller language model, which is Claude Instant. So when we did the cost comparison, so OpenAI versus Anthropic Claude Instant, the cost was like 1/10. So from OpenAI to Claude, and then Claude to Claude Instant. So it's like drastically, less costly and more fast if I use Claude Instant versus OpenAI. So the question constantly comes back is like, now which one to use? And the answer, to be honest, in this particular session, we don't have the bandwidth actually to give you all the answers, or even I don't have all the answers, right? The industry is evolving. But what I'm trying to highlight over here is a problem statement. And I'm trying to highlight a separate industry that is beginning to evolve, which is actually bringing in tools to do the evaluation for us and help us to take a decision. That is the problem statement or the direction of the discussion that I'm going to. So I'll stop over here for any questions or any comments.
Yeah, Ujjwal, just a question of curiosity. When you talked about the Anthropic comparison, was the cost predominantly driven by processing power? The amount of TPU cycles?
I do not know. So they have their cost calculators, and also we can use that to find some of the cost. But internally, why the cost is bigger or more or less, I'm not an Anthropic person or an OpenAI person, so I won't be able to tell you. But what I can tell you is like there are cost differences. There are also response time differences. So for example, when I used Claude Instant versus OpenAI GPT-3 or GPT-4, what we have found is like Claude Instant is like super fast. But then if I ask Claude Instant to create an essay or write a story for me, it's not great at doing it. But if I ask OpenAI to write a story or GPT to write a story, it's beautiful at doing it, right? So now it becomes like the question of like, what is the use case that I'm trying to solve? Do I really need to go to OpenAI, or can Claude Instant be good enough? Or can Llama be good enough? Or can Mistral be good enough, right? So it's all depending on the use cases.
When we are talking about like evaluation, I think like that would be two sets of evaluation. One is more around like, okay, maybe the cost comparison, maybe like how do we host it, or if we are going to have a our own, let's say, open source language model. So that is one set of evaluation criteria I think we can talk about. And another is actually the performance of that particular model, the technical model metrics, which we generally make in terms of traditional machine learning models or deep learning models. But the language models, the evaluation criteria has kind of evolved. You would not be able to directly measure the performance, whether it is in traditional machine learning terms. So I think both evaluation can be a way of like evaluating the models.
Absolutely. And when I started doing research on this particular topic, and it's just too much, information over there. There are thousands and thousands of, I mean, not thousands, like hundreds of papers on evaluation. So now, if I go to the next,
Hey,
Quick
Ujjwal,
question.
sorry, go ahead, Naveen.
yeah, Naveen, go ahead.
So you were showing some of the use cases. Have you found any correlation of what fits better more? For example,
I'll-
summarization is one thing.
Yeah, I have worked on, I have not worked on extensive use case, but I have worked on fairly like one of the few use cases that is the most popular, and RAG is one of the most popular use cases. And what we have found is like, I mean, a smaller model is good enough. And we'll talk more about that RAG in the next slides. And not necessarily you have to go with a large language model. But again, it's all dependent on, it's very subjective. It's the whole thing about like large language model is probabilistic, because if you write a function which is, a method which says, okay, a plus b, and then pass two parameters, 2 and 3, it will always give you 5. But the moment it comes to large language models, it's very probabilistic, and it's also very subjective. So for a specific question, we all know like there is this thing called temperature, right? So if I increase the temperature, it will be more creative. So for a specific question and based on the temperature setting, I can get one answer. But for the same similar question with the high temperature setting, I'll get a different answer in the different response. Different time we execute the same prompt. So what makes it more interesting is like, how do I evaluate and how do I judge, and kind of like, how do I call that this particular prompt with this particular LLM with this particular context that I'm providing to the prompt is giving me the perfect answer? And what happens if the large language model changes behind the scene? Tomorrow it's going to give me a different answer. So how do I kind of like measure that? That is, I think, one of the most critical problem that industry is facing. Again, this particular session, I do not have answers to all of them. I'm just bringing up the questions. Maybe you guys can, do your own research also.
Right.
But did that
One
answer?
experience I wanted.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes. So very much similar dilemma I had. So I started with GPT for all, and I found that this is open source and is giving, doing pretty good job.
Mm.
But then as and when we started getting into more intricate questions, we started seeing
In any meeting, I've heard a lot about it, but it's the first
I
time
have
I've actually
to,
seen it.
yeah, I have to. Maybe we have to find a different way of like hosting.
Yeah.
And one more question. I have a small question.
Yeah.
Now, for supposing a use case, okay, maybe a RAG use case whereby I want to access the Confluence and Jira links in an organization, specific organization. So should I go to something called like Llama or GPT-4, or should I fine tune to, because see, recently I've been hearing about the TinyML also. So should I go for something like that? Which should be, you think, is a better option?
That is exactly the dilemma, right? And no one knows the answer. And so that's why I'll quickly jump into that. And that's why I wanted to kind of like bring up this topic, because we are all excited about like using GPT, but then when it comes to real use case, we get stuck, right? So let's start, see like where the industry is going, right? So
Hey,
some
Ujjwal, quick question going back to, sorry to keep you on that page. What
Okay.
is the model size predicated on?
the number of parameters that is used to train the model.
I see.
Yeah. So yeah. And that's also that opens up a different can of worms and a different interesting point. Yeah,
Okay.
Rohit.
Hi, this is Rohit. So, sorry, I was late for the meeting. So, I'm actually, so there is a point that we have Google Bard and ChatGPT 4, right? And so Google Bard is from Google, and Google has like enormous data that they have. So, will in future, and I also heard, maybe it may be a wrong statement, that some of the portals such as Stack Overflow and things like that, they are stopping ChatGPT 4 to scrape their data, right?
Yeah.
Because the traffic on chat, those sites are decreasing, right? Everybody's using ChatGPT 4, whereas Google has the access to any kind of data they want. So in future, will Google Bard be more prominent and kind of, so is that the right statement or?
Again, like I cannot predict the industry. I'm not a
Yeah,
industry predictor, but I can show you something very interesting. So Perplexity AI, I'm like tongue twister. Perplexity AI. This is a company who is actually, based on my research, this is a company who is now giving competition to Google. So basically, they are telling that we are going to change the way people search. So they are combining Google search with large language models. Typically, if I go to Google and search for anything, it will give me a bunch of links. Now Google has started, putting this generative AI content around it with Bard. But Perplexity AI is kind of like, you know, putting up a stiff competition in front of Google, and they are kind of trying to revolutionizing the whole search industry. Jeff Bezos is a big investor in Perplexity AI. And that's what's very interesting to see, like how the market is changing. So you never know. Like today, it seems like Google has all the data, but there are really strong competitors out there who are challenging the industry. So, for example, if I search for anything, say for example, if Meta's open source AGI, whatever, right? It will not. It's fast. It will not only give me the sources. It's also coming up with a concrete answer, and it's giving me also like related questions that you can ask. But more interestingly, it's also, if you turn on the Copilot and what is Meta's LLM, whatever it is, like if you turn on the Copilot, it will give you what exactly it's doing, like behind the scenes, like what is his thought process and all the steps of understanding it, the question, searching the website and found this 8 sources and kind of like stuff like that, right?
And is it, sorry to interrupt, is it real time? Because that's what ChatGPT doesn't
It is.
have.
It is real time. Like it's bringing. So all large language models has the problem of like a cutoff date, which
Yeah.
ChatGPT is trying to resolve. But this guy is telling me that we are all scraping the data. It's all real time, so you can actually search for the latest news and it will summarize everything and give you an answer rather than bunch of links. The whole industry is changing. Like every day we are seeing something new that is coming up.
So one counter question to that is, like, this must also be searching Google or
I don't
any
know
of the
like how they
search
do it.
engines, right? If they block these
Maybe they are
sites,
building their own search engine, or maybe they have some partnership with some other, you know, you know, search engines. I do not know how they are doing.
okay, sure. Thank you.
So coming back to our point or topic, but this was very good discussion, right? And that's what we want, like collaboration and kind of like brainstorming. It should not be one way show. So this is something very interesting that I found in LinkedIn. Someone posted a very good article. And what is the true cost of LLM? So of course, we all know that if I'm using large language model for doing my project or building an application on top of it, inference is the first cost, right? Cost of calling an LLM to generate a response. But then if it's not giving me the proper response, then tuning cost is a big cost. People are not talking about it. Pre-training, if tuning is not good enough, now we have to go back to pre-training and start a large language model, which is like my own domain specific language model. And then of course the hosting cost and everything, like if you want to host a language model, that comes in the picture. So next I was looking at like what are the evaluation benchmarks that are available. And this is the, these are some of the industry standard benchmarks that I found. And Glue, Super Glue, Big Bench by Google, and then MMLU. So these are some of the industry standards of evaluation. And for example, if I go to Helm, benchmark, right? So this is from Stanford. And what they're doing is they're bringing in a holistic framework for evaluating the benchmark model. So there are like different, and people from data science background, you can relate to it. So there are like different metrics of evaluating a language model, and based on harmfulness, toxicity, etc. And they're coming up with some scores. And if I'm really interested, that first thing is like which language model that I'm going to pick. And the next question is this language model solving my problem? So these guys, what they're trying to do is like, they're trying to solve this first problem, that which language model do I pick? Because organizations have this thing about like, is the language model harmful or generating toxic content, right? So these are the metrics which gives me clear understanding of like, where do this language models stand in order of generation of toxic content or harmful content or hate speech, etc. Again, keep in mind, as a application builder, I'm not responsible for generating these metrics, because LLM providers and these organizations are generating these metrics on behalf of us, right? I mean, on behalf of this large language models, and they're coming up with these industry standards, right? So I'm using this contract. So if I'm in an organization and I want to see like, hey, I'm choosing this large language model. So suppose GPT-4 is not good for me. Suppose, let's say I go with something else. So this is the whole list over here. And we decide that, okay, I'm going to go with Mixtral. Fine. So then my organization, InfoSec might be interested in see, okay, what are the different metrics that we have? So we can use these metrics to kind of like have a discussion with organizations saying that, say, help me in producing these metrics. And then these are the informed decision that I have taken based on these metrics. And that's why we are going with this large language model or any other model, right? So what I'm trying to say is GPT-4 is not the end of the story, but GPT-4 is the greatest of all. That's what I can see. But due to different constraints within the organization, it can be legal constraint, it can be cost constraint, it can be like many other constraints, maybe the performance constraint. If GPT-4 is not the other option, then if I have to choose something, like say Anthropic Claude, then these are the metrics that we can use to talk to an organization InfoSec team to say, hey, these are the metrics that are available, and this is why we are taking this decision. That, okay, my constraints did not meet, and these are the metrics. So let's take an informed decision. We'll come to some middle ground, and then we'll take a decision and move on. And let's say we decide with Llama 2 or GPT 3.5. Right? So that's kind of like it kind of like opens up a conversation. So that's where it makes it very interesting, that how do we choose a language? So similarly, if you explore all the other areas, you will get some more very, very interesting thing. But that does not solve all the problems, because as I was telling, there are two parts of the story. How do I choose a language model? Whether it's generating toxic content or harmful content or hate speech, etc., and hundreds of other metrics. And then now let's say if we have chosen a large language model, now I'm trying to apply that large language model into my use case. Is that solving my problem? So that is now on my side, right? This is on the left side where these big companies are coming up with the metrics. And on the other side, we have my use case. So let's see, one of the most common use cases is RAG. And what does RAG mean?
Just
Mhm.
Sorry to interrupt. Just before like proceeding to the system, I just wanted to add one particular point regarding the last metric you were showing about all the different metrics. Is like all these large language models are kind of benchmarked against a set of standard gold standard data. So it might not be like very much as you said, like it might not translate into those metric might not translate directly into your domain specific or something of your users.
Correct, correct. Absolutely. So that's where, a lot of courses and a lot of topics, or I have seen in LinkedIn or, about evaluation kind of like sometimes misleading, because we cannot just go with this evaluation metrics, because there are domain specific evaluation that we still have to do beyond this metrics over here. Again, I'm not a super, star in this industry. I'm learning, you're learning, and there might be a lot of other things that we can add on top of it. But this is my understanding at this point of time. As the industry changes, my understanding might also change, right?
Just
Uh,
to add my two
hmm.
cents of
Yeah,
like
yeah, sure.
whatever I have
Pradeep, go ahead.
explored is
Yeah.
like, so when you come to the technical metrics, which I was talking about, like how do you evaluate the model on, let's say, model performance, not necessarily let's say that we are done away with like costing and all those aspects, and when then we try to build an application, a particular model, let's say when we are talking about, so RAG is one of the features, right? You limit the current information to the model. That is one. And there are different metrics like ruse scores. So ruse scores are nothing but when a model generates a particular sentence, you might be able to compare that across the human evaluated a summarization or that stuff. And then you can generate a score around that. Something on those lines are like what I have like
Yeah.
used or seeing that people using it, and to kind of uh, get away or try to handle a toxicity and those kind of concerns. I saw one pretty interesting use case that was handled using just the prompt engineering itself. So what you would do is essentially you would write a prompt that whatever the response that you're getting from the large language model, you would fit that into a prompt, and then essentially that prompt would be to kind of detoxify that and make it in a formal language. So your instruction or your prompt should be that way. It could be in a different chain of thoughts or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah. But interesting part is to add to that, right? So we can handle it by using my custom prompt, or if you go to ChatGPT and just ask it to generate a hate speech, it is not even going to create a hate speech, right? So that means ChatGPT as a large language model has already taken care of it,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And these are the, scores or the benchmarks that these organizations are producing, and that's why you see ChatGPT on the top, because they have already taken care of it. And I'm not going to worry about like, or maybe I'll going to worry about it, whatever it is. But I'm like super confident that even if I make some mistake in my prompt engineering, ChatGPT is there to, take care of it, because it's not going to generate a toxic response, right? It's already taken care of it. Whereas based on cost, if I go all the down in the food chain and I pick up, language model which is very cheap, or maybe like I host something in my own, GPUs and run it, how do I ensure like, that is not going to generate some toxicity and all? So maybe that's where all those ruse scores and the blue scores, etc., right, comes into picture. Um,
So since you brought that point, right, I was doing this course from Andrew Ng. So he talks about that Chat GPT is like all these language models might be biased, and he gave an example that, for example, if you give a prompt to Chat GPT that a nurse forgot her keys, like a nurse forgot keys, right? Just you write that without writing any her or his, it will say that okay, she will do this and that. Whereas if you write a surgeon forgot the keys, it will say he will do something, right? So it has that gender bias because it's assuming that nurse will always be a lady, whereas a surgeon will always be a male. So
yeah,
that
yes.
why that's bias. And I actually
Interesting,
tried
right?
it.
And we have
tried
not
it.
even talked about bias, but that's so interesting. Yeah.
I tried it that day last week, and it
Okay.
really gave me that. You
Oh,
can
wow.
try nurse and surgeon. So nurse, it will always say that she,
She.
whereas
Okay.
for surgeon, it will always refer male actually. So
And
Wow,
actually,
look at that. Amazing. Okay.
I found something similar with Bing image creation, which is coming off of Dolly 3. And chef was typically male, baker was typically female.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so that's the
Bias
bias
is like
actually.
Yeah.
altogether a different topic in entire, like even in the traditional machine learning model, but with these LLMs and generative AI and visual models, it is like coming directly onto your face. But like bias has always been a problem.
Always been there.
Even if you make a classification model, binary classification model of, let's say, whether to predict a default or not, if you do not have that balanced data, or you did that kind of engineering to balance your data out or your feature out, bias was always a problem. Like,
Always there.
yeah,
And it all
it's
depends on
coming
like
out of the base right now. Yeah.
it's all depends on the training data, right? It's all,
Yep.
maybe like, for example, maybe the textbooks that was used to train ChatGPT had most of the references to nurses as her or a lady, right? So it's all about the training data. Who knows?
Yep.
That's
How
a,
do you handle that
you
training
guys,
data?
like some of you should, pick up a topic on bias and we can brainstorm and drill deep. Okay, so time is running out, so I want to wrap this up. So we'll quickly talk about RAG. Most popular use case. Everyone is doing RAG, right? In all the industry, like everywhere. So basically, what is RAG? RAG is retrieval augmented generation, right? So what does that mean? So if I ask a language model, tell me about USA or tell me about New Jersey, based on the content it is trained on, it will be able to answer. But if I ask a, large language model about like, tell me about my organization's some specific data, it's not going to be able to answer because it does not have that, training data available to it to kind of like generate that answer. So basically, when it comes to domain specific or an industry or an organization specific question, it won't be able to answer. It might be able to answer kind of like a generic answer. So for example, if you ask it some insurance question, it will be able to answer based on all the public data that is available. But when it comes to a specific industry insurance company, like say ABC Insurance and their policies and procedure, whatever it won't be able to answer. So that's where RAG or retrieval augmented generation comes into picture, where I augment large language models capability with my own industry data and generate an answer. So basically, if I look at the steps, so I have some prompt coming in. I store, first step is like I store all this information into my knowledge base. AWS has a platform called Bedrock where they call this as a knowledge base. You can use any other vector store. And actually, we are going to do a deep dive on RAG next week. But you can use any other vector store or databases to kind of like create the knowledge base. So step one is you ask a question. Step two is it goes ahead and queries the knowledge base. It does a similarity search, which is nothing to do with like large language model. It's an existing procedure. It has been there for years now. It will do some similarity search or context-based search on the document store. There can be hundreds and thousands of documents. Based on your prompt and the query, it will try to find relevant documents. And once you have the relevant information, for now you have the prompt, you have the relevant documents. Now this whole combination goes into the LLM, and LLM is used as a language summarization or summarization of the document based on the question that you ask. For example, so if I have a question about an insurance that will, can, I don't know, like whatever, right? Can a person who is 21 years of age be under parents insurance? I'm just making it up, right? So it will go take this query, it will go to the policy documents, search for similar kind of documents. Now it has all these questions and answers, relevant answers from the documents. Now it will go to large language model, say, hey, this is the question, these are the sample reference documents that I have, generate and answer which is human understandable. So this is RAG. So I'm kind of like leveraging large language model to concise and summarize the related documents that I've searched from this document store, and then I'm generating an answer which is human readable. The problem with RAG is we are not going to actually jump into RAG, but in the last 2 minutes, I'm going to quickly touch base on the evaluation because we are running out of time. The problem with this is I am not sure, first of all, whether the document search retrieve the proper documents fragments or not. And then I'm also not sure whether the generated response is kind of close enough to actually acceptable response by legal or by whatever it is, right? So that's where the LLM evaluation piece comes into play, where when I'm building a large language model based application, not a large language model, but an application, I need some frameworks which can help me evaluate the scores. So one of the most popular score is faithfulness, context precision, answer relevancy, and context recall. It's an open source, project by Ragaas, and we have used it, and it kind of like gives me a fair answer to these problems, and it kind of comes up with scores, and based on that, we can decide, okay, is the document search not good enough, or is the large language model not good enough? And all this permutation combination, we can come up with some scores and kind of like see, okay, what does it really mean? But this is not the end of the story. This is just the starting of the story, because this whole industry is evolving, and every day there are like new metrics coming up. In fact, the whole industry is kind of like, there are new tools that are coming up to do this evaluation. One is Langsmith is there, Langfuse is there, Ragas is coming up with their monitoring framework, AWS is coming up with their monitoring, evaluation framework. So, like I'm pretty sure Microsoft and Google is doing pretty much the same thing. So we are just at time. Any last few comments or questions from anyone? Happy to discuss. I know Abhi, you have your hands raised.
So in my experience, what I came across is like the limitation of the token size, what you pass to the to these LLMs. Like I was using, I think, the Llama 2 or some other models.
The limitation is going away, right? Day by day. So GPT-4 now handles like 100,000 token. Claude handles 200,000 tokens, and is just increasing. But also on the other side, to kind of like counter argument, on the other side, people say that if you give a complete document, like a full 200-page book to a large language model, it will get more confused. So too much information to a large language model is also confusing. So you have to somehow find that, little piece which is relevant and then send it over. So it's mode is not always great, is what I'm like hearing as well.
So I was playing with this on my desktop on a Mac itself. So that's where I hit the limitation of like token size. And I think RAG is also one of the kind of solution that you fragment and pull out the relevant searches from that document and implement RAG architecture to basically get through that.
Anyone else?
Uday,
Points.
Yeah. So, like probably next session you told you'll be taking about RAG, right? So I was wondering if you can also take about the RAG using the graph models, like in the sense that like Neo4j, how you put into that retrieve from that.
Yeah, I have not, experimented with Neo4j. We will see, like if I get, the speaker on that particular topic. But next week, our topic is like MongoDB. So it's MongoDB has, I know like someone is from MongoDB, right? Someone mentioned that you have worked on MongoDB, but MongoDB has, extended their capabilities to add vector search also. So next session, we are going to dive deep into like RAG using MongoDB vector search.
But I like Pinecone. I was hearing so much about Pinecone. So is it which is better, like Pinecone, MongoDB? Redis also there, like so.
Again, like there is no clear-cut answer, right? So that's the evaluation, and that's where the stress of evaluation is. Like, which one is better? So it's all about cost. your legal, organizations, legal, vendor agreements. If you already have Redis and you are using Redis, do you want to go with Pinecone? If you're starting from grounds up, maybe like people will go with Pinecone. But if you look at Pinecone, Pinecone is the top of the list right now. But it's a vendor lock-in with Pinecone. But if you can go with Chroma, it's open source. So it's like there is no real, clear-cut answer. So basically, the point over here is when a company or organization is starting this journey, they have to keep in mind that, hey, it's not like you just plug it in and it's not like that. It's not going to work like that. You have to build a competency around it so that you can, factor in this particular, things about like, evaluation and kind of like build a competency which kind of like maintains this course also for a longer period of time, because the LLM can change, your document indexes can change, a lot of things can happen.
Hi, Ujjwal. This is Rohit. So I'm pretty new to this. I've been using ChatGPT for last maybe 7-8 months. So in order to gain more from the next sessions, what I should be doing, I've been doing this course from Andrew NG from Deep Learning, that Gen AI for all. Is there anything uh, else you would recommend to get started on this journey?
There are like tons and tons of courses out there, but the reason why we are meeting over here is so that we can, brainstorm and kind of like share ideas. Because the online courses like it's one-sided, you just get it like one-sided feed. Over here we can discuss. So I would recommend like just come in, like participate, and then if you have any specific topic or any problems that we want to address, then we can all look into it and then have a session around it. But
Okay, okay.
just come in like without any agenda in mind, and
All right, okay. Thank you, Ujjwal.
So that's pretty much it. Thanks everyone for joining, and hope to connect you on LinkedIn, and then hope you're going to be present in the next session. And
And that
Abhi,
in
from a data science background, maybe you should bring up some topic and present, and at some point.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. Nice meeting you guys. Take care. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Joel.